Peter makes a very fair point, doesn't he? I mean, Liz Truss, your candidate, she was running third the whole way through this, but she beat Penny Mordaunt into second place. 4 Tory MPs had changed their vote. She would not be in this final runoff, but I mean, I have to say, a lot of people say it's 2 grown-ups in the race. Held 2 of the great offices of state, vying for the top job at number 10. Why do you think that Liz Truss is best placed to take over, not just as Tory leader, but as Prime Minister in September?
Well, I didn't go for Liz Truss immediately. I looked at all the candidates. I talked to them all. I actually attended a very private hustings where we had them in front of us for an hour each.
Oh,
they
wow.
were really examined by questions. Yeah, serious. Well, a lot of very senior Conservative MPs who had run departments, who had been involved in the party for a long time. And actually, there were 2 people that stood out. Liz was one of them. Her answers were clear, crisp, and she engaged. And the other one was Suella. But those 2 are together now. And when I was watching or listening to her at that time, I came to the conclusion, actually, that there is a certain inner steel to Liz Truss. And remember, we're not electing just a leader here. Mm-hmm. If this was a leader of the opposition, you could experiment with people hardly heard of or whatever. They have time to grow. You don't have time to grow. You'll go straight in as Prime Minister on day one.
Or hit the ground, as Liz Truss tweeted yesterday, then had to delete it and say, no, she said she was going to hit the ground running. Bit of a gaffe on her first day.
You're always slightly a prisoner of people who put stuff out and don't bother to check it. But hit the ground running is exactly what it is. And the point is, you've got an economic crisis. You have a war in Ukraine, and we have a global problem over demand outstripping supply, causing inflationary pressures. So all of these things you're going to have to deal with straight away on day one, no messing around. So we're electing somebody, you need to see something in them.
Okay. Well, a lot of people are saying, we had Steve Reid, Steve Reid, Labour opposition, he's not exactly a target voter for you, I understand that, but he was saying something, not only was he just throwing back some of the lines that had been used in those debates, including Kimmy Bednor, you can't trust what anyone says, and but he was pointing out that, this is just more of the same. He's saying both of these candidates are continuity candidates. Anything that's gone wrong during Boris Johnson's tenure at number 10, they voted for all these measures. They voted for national insurance to go up. They voted for other policies, and therefore you're just going to basically have more of the same. How is Liz Truss going to? I mean, she's already been sort of seen as someone who's going to, she's going to cut taxes, so she's different from Rishi Sunak on that in terms of immediacy. But how is she going to show voters that I've got new ideas, I'm going to do something different, without being incredibly critical of the government that she's already still a member of?
Well, first of all, Labour would say that, wouldn't they? So I'm just going to park that on one side, because their job is to try and say this is all rubbish. In truth, we are actually going to see a shift in direction. For Liz Truss, I have no doubt at all that, and I agree with her on this, that she's right in this regard, that the Treasury itself has got it very badly wrong over the last, certainly 3 years, I think, and particularly with regards to their view on growth. Right now, the bank is responsible for our domestic inflation problem. Yes, there's a global one, but there is an element of national problems here. They were still pumping money into the economy and failed to listen to the independent economists who were all saying you've got an inflationary problem, you need to be raising interest rates over a year ago. So we'll have to deal with that. So interest rates have to be high. But what she's saying, and I think this is the key bit, is that you cannot have higher interest rates and have the highest tax burden for decades, because you will crush the economy. What we have to do is have growth, and growth needs to go on. And that means basically getting the overall cost down to help people through this crisis, but also just to let them have more of their own money to be able to live the lives that they lead. And that's a very good principle, and she intends to apply it. Whereas Rishi Sunak at the moment wants to keep it steady and then maybe do something later on. We don't have that time. We have to get on with it literally right now. Even this leadership election is wasting.
Well, I mean, a lot of us are saying that. I mean, the fuel duty issue, again, I cannot understand why anyone thinks that cutting fuel duty isn't a very, very good idea right now. That will immediately cut inflation and would be, good business for the Conservative Party. And there's a lot of issues here in terms of these two people going up against each other. Well, interestingly, one a Brexiteer who's now now a big, who's now not talking about really, I suppose, taking advantage of a lot of these issues like the right to cut VAT because we're not in the EU anymore, and someone who campaigned for Remain, Liz Truss, who is now sort of seen as a staunch Brexiteer. I wonder when it comes down to issues other than tax, and I think that's going to be a big dividing line, and growth and all of that. How much are other issues going to come into play, particularly background? Rishi Sunak's, private school, rich parents, made load of money, rich wife, the non-dom, tax status of his wife, etc., Liz Truss, comprehensive school, and all of that. How much are those issues going to matter, do you think? And how much are issues like how you perform in a TV debate? A lot of criticism of Liz Truss being very wooden, trying to channel with some of her clothing and her pronouncements, trying to channel the former Prime Minister, of course, Margaret Thatcher, but not very successfully. Do you think those things, rather than the meat and potatoes of actual policy, are going to matter a lot?
Well, I think if left completely to the journalist, it will be the latter, not the former, because that's pretty much the sum of my conversations with most of your colleagues in and around here. They want to deal with the peripherals. I'm very keen for us to deal directly with the issues. I mean, the thing that will affect people after this election is what they do, not what they look like. And
yet those things often do matter.
I know. Yeah, you've been brilliant at pointing this out in all your time in journalism. But my point is that it is important, yes. But the reality is, if you look at how they performed, I thought in the debate on Sunday, Liz Truss showed that determination when she took Rishi Sunak on over the issue of the economy. And it was, one of those kind of intake breath moments when she went to him and said, well, if you've got this great growth plan, where's it been for the last 2.5 years? And I thought all of us went, wow.
Yeah, the trouble with that, though, of course, again, you're into that blue on blue attacking. I mean, how can we have a positive campaign about what the Tories should be doing with ignoring the elephant in the room, which is that you've been in power for the last 12 years and both candidates have voted for all policies?
Of course, we've had 2.5 of the worst, most difficult years any government has faced. So, first of all, it's like compressing 4 or 5 years of government into the remaining 2 years that we have now. That's the real problem. We have to get out of the pandemic. We have to resolve our economic problems as a result, all as a result of the pandemic. But at the same time, we also have to make sure that we allow people to have their own livelihoods and lives grow. And that's really critical. So, what I think the public's looking for is what will they do to make our lives, to help us make our lives better and to understand the problems that we face. One of the areas that I was very pleased that Liz pointed out was that we have the worst tax system for couples who choose to maybe to look after an elderly relative or to stay at home. We have a tax system that the worst in the OECD that penalizes couples who make that choice. Yet that is a very pro-society choice. If you looked after your kids for 2 years or 3 years, chose to take a time away from work or to an elderly relative rather than putting them at a home, you want to look after them, you get hammered in the tax system. And she made this point the other day, about a week ago, to say, we have to review this because it leads to more people going into homes. It leads to more kids in difficulty and problems in families. And
indeed.
So these are very important ideas.
Listen, I think what a lot of people watching and listening today would like to hear from what these candidates are going to do is not a review, not another inquiry, not this or that. What they really want is some action. You've got a 75 majority. There's really no excuse. If it's Conservative policy you want to push through, you've got support for it, you get on and do with it. There's lots of shilly-shallying around. We've seen how quickly things can happen when it comes to locking us in our homes, for goodness sake. Let's have some action. Let's get some stuff done. I want to ask you, just Prime Minister Boris Johnson's final PMQs yesterday. He ended by saying hasta la vista. People are talking about him maybe coming back. Do you think he will come back? And what did you make of him saying that the mission was largely accomplished? The standing ovation on the Tory side, not from Labour side or any other opposition MPs, and certainly not also from Theresa May. What did you make of all of that?
Well, it was Boris. It was classic Boris, really, which is... he's at his best when he is a salesman. And
do you think was he at his best insulting Keir Starmer, calling him a great pointless human bollard? I thought it was demeaning to him and the country and the office.
It was a Prime Minister's questions with a man that was going, who didn't really care, and a man on the other side who was struggling to figure out what he was trying to do to land a blow on a man that is anyway not going to be there next week. So the reality is, I think we should just push that to one side. The key thing now is, you're quite right, and you made the most important point. It's not reviews, it's not talk, it's action. And I've said to her, and she's agreed, that you have an immediate emergency budget. What we do is we fix this straight away on day 2. You get this done. People need to feel the effect of that immediately.
Yep.
We need to get on top of all of this. We need to get the British people essentially back into a reasonably liquid state so they can actually afford their lives and get on with them and take the pain away as much as we possibly can.
Sir Iain Duncan Smith,
the first issue.
thank you very much indeed for joining us, former leader of the Conservative Party.